And good evening, everybody. Welcome back after the little bit of hiatus. Um, and welcome to normal hockey talk tonight. Not brought to you by Winnipeg because I forgot that I only made the 4-man graphic and not the 3-camera graphic. But we are here today with Fluw. Is it Fluw or
Um, Good question. I'm
because
technically, I'd say so. It's wolf backwards, so
yeah
I guess. Yeah.
I didn't
um
even know that.
um
Huh.
as well as Kahri making her return and Afino. You guys have hard names. I have no room to talk. Um but yeah, we are a plethora of GMs in Kahri, and welcome back everybody. As a quick reminder, we are still, I don't even know if I can actually talk about this on Twitch, but we are laundering money from from Jeff Bezos and giving it to charity. So if you have the Prime subs, send that this way, and I'll be putting that towards the charity drive to cap off the month of charity that Jess and Kari were running. We got somewhere along like $30 so far, which is pretty cool. But yeah, thanks for coming out, you guys. I know we've been trying to line up the two of you on the show for a good couple weeks at this point, but I'm glad we could finally make that happen. The first exciting bit that I teased very last moment with the breaking news is that I was supposed to send the link to a cap. Hang on. Is that the J Awards head position has been filled, and in classic Obama giving Obama a medal meme fashion, it is me and Kari taking over that department, which is kind of cool, kind of exciting. Hopefully, getting to return that department to some great form that it's had before. I think all the people there are pretty great and pretty excited about it, so it should be a good time. Surprise. Not as much, I guess, hoopla as it could have been, but also last minute announcements. So, um, how are you guys? I guess Flu, you might be the only person that didn't know that that was happening.
Well, yeah. There you go, huh?
Yeah.
I guess like it's gonna be great. Good thing it's finally
um, Thoughts, feelings, Kari. Your general vibes getting into all of this. Going from first gen recruited by Teddy like 3 months ago to HO head of a department. How's that all feeling?
I'm excited. I think good things are coming.
I'm optimistic.
Turn up.
No, they're good. Or are you guys not hearing me?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Cars want me to turn up the gain a little bit, but I think we're okay.
No, yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah, ACAP, sorry, you missed it by just a hair. That's my fault. Yeah, we'll be taking that over. We have taken that over. Started meeting the team this weekend, but also it was a rough weekend for both of us, and so we're getting into the swing of things now. And there should be more about that in the coming week. We want to really get in with the community because there's been frustrations on the awards team side. There's been frustrations on the public side. There's been frustrations in locker rooms and in back rooms, and there's a couple different ways that we can bring everything together and clarify expectations and clarify what our goals are, and really figure out what the community wants to see out of the system and what is actually, we can talk about like what's actually feasible and what is, reasonable expectations to have going forward. But that should be happening this week. We will have a couple spots to be filling. So if you're interested in filling out that team, stay tuned. But yeah, good times. The awards for the past season just happened recently, getting back into more sim hockey oriented discussion. Let's see. Were you guys at all connected to any of the SHL awards? I don't remember who was nominated because I unfortunately wasn't paying too much attention during all of that.
Myself, no.
I think I checked out of that portion. I think I saw the dev team won.
Yeah.
Whatever that award is. I don't know the name of it, but obviously their work was.
Littleton?
Yeah, Littleton. Thank
Yeah.
you. Their work was obviously very appreciated, but I think that was the only word that I caught.
We've got. Oh wait, are the winners actually not in here? They're only on the presentation. Okay. Yeah, the Portal team probably won the Littleton. I can't remember any of the award. Did Wally win rookie or was that Gabe?
Good question.
Because I know Ritu didn't win. But that's I think the only thing that I followed. It was nice to see, honestly, like teams not normally represented in awards. Like Seattle was having a pretty rough season. Texas didn't have a super successful season. Minnesota didn't have a super successful season. LAP and Toronto both had rookies in contention, and that was like I wouldn't say surprising because I think Shore's team has done a really good job in recognizing those players, but it's been nice to see that overall you don't have to be in a perfect situation to be in consideration for some of these accolades, and that's been a big plus to me. On the J Awards, as I didn't have these laid out ahead of time.
J Awards.
Control effing Anthe can go into threads and let's see. We had Kahri in there for the Miller, and then Bad Wolf in there for top defensive defender out of UConn. Fluw, you guys were also recognized for the top GM nominees.
Not sure how that happened, but yeah.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that. You're like, we got worse actively, and now we're getting recognized.
Yeah, legitimately. Really confused, but all right, I'll take the recognition.
Just had to marinate a little bit. Yeah, overall, like, I think there were some awards that got questioned, but that's kind of always the case. I think a lot of the statistical awards have actually gotten pretty good at the nomination process and the voting process. I think that Fuzz has done a lot of work behind the scenes, especially on the SHL side, of presenting players more comprehensively outside of just sorting the index by volume stats. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the player cards that he's been putting together for the awards teams. I'll put that in the chat real quick because it's actually pretty cool work. Here was the original thread, and then he also did some work to look at the nominees that got announced, where he's doing a lot of percentile analysis of the players, and presenting it in a way that's kind of similar to the frequently posted on Twitter NHL graphics from I can't remember what his name is, the guy that does them on Twitter. But pulling everything together so that you can kind of see how, at a glance, a player compares to other people in the position group.
Nice.
And it's been a big help, I think, in demonstrating where players are ultimately exceeding expectations and are exceedingly successful. And I think that's been huge for the SHL awards team in kind of looking at players beyond just volume stats, which has been nice. Fine pirate. Oh, there's like a ton of images. Like there's like literally a dozen player cards to look at. I'm not gonna link all of them.
It's pretty impressive though.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely something that has me pretty excited looking forward on the J side, because Fuzz has a way to do this for the J as well.
Nice.
And then I'm going to be bringing back my point shares work that I did back when Teddy and I were in the were you part of it? You were part of SHN, right?
Yeah, for a little bit, I think.
Okay.
That was a while ago, though.
It was a very long time ago. But I was doing the point shares, which is effectively like wins over replacement or win shares, but for hockey. And that was super useful in looking at simplifying a player's overall contribution to teams. So I think statistically we've, as a league, developed a lot of ways to look at statistical success in new ways and better ways than what we were doing a year, 2, 3 years ago.
So I guess my most important question for you is, do you accept bribes?
No. And also
Damn it.
that's kind of the awkward part about what Pyro was getting about in chat is how this affects Carolina's chances at awards and how are they lower. Because like we're probably not going to have Carolina people on the committee with the weight that Kahri and I are pulling, and it's going to be the people voting aren't going to have inherent Carolina biases, and we're going to be like facilitating discussion and managing the department, but we're not actively the ones making these decisions. So it might hurt overall a little bit, but also Carolina just hasn't won awards in general, so it's not really anything lost. At least I can take a little bit of solace in the process of being better. We'll see what we can do for UConn. Maybe not Detroit though.
I'd like one player nominated. We didn't have a single one last season, so just one would be nice.
I don't know, man. That skill issue, I guess. I've never talked.
No, it is.
We've had multiple seasons recently in Carolina where like mid-table or upper mid-table and just no awards because we don't put up like stupid big offensive numbers.
Just send them a tank top and you'll have a Detroit player on in the noms for sure.
But yeah, no, overall, pretty excited. I think that Shore has really laid out in the SHL awards side. I've kind of laid out on the events team side before. There's definitely departments and jobs and roles in the league that, and HO is like this to some extent, but there are these like sort of project manager roles, and it's not doing a lot of the work per se, but it's a lot of knowing what people need, getting them the tools that they need to do these jobs that are, the voting jobs, the grunt work jobs, the file work jobs. There's a lot of opportunities to manage and facilitate site work that I think more departments are going to start heading that way. And I think it's overall probably healthier for these departments, and also a better opportunity for different people to get involved, because the more different skill sets we can facilitate contributing to the site, the better. One thing that we initially were going to talk to Teddy and Fluw about a couple weeks ago, maybe as far back as last season. You guys at this point are both recreates. Fluw, you're on what, your fourth player? Third player. Both recently getting into JGMing. Teddy a bit more recently than Fluw, but you guys, Teddy recently coming back to the site, recreating, then getting involved with GMing Detroit. Fluw going through long player arcs, going from working with Chevy and Great Falls to running Yukon, and then recreating. How have you guys enjoyed the recreate perspective now as you're running a team? Has that changed or influenced the way you guys look at SHL GMing? Having already been all the way through everything.
Good question. I don't, from perspective of like SHL GMing, I don't know. If basically, like, I guess the way to put it for myself is recreating. I kind of, with regards to SHL, I had a mindset of just going to any team, and like, I guess knowing what I know in the J, I guess trying to implement that as well in Toronto. They have added me to their war room when I joined, when they drafted me, and I've kind of revamped the scouting process there to kind of emulate what I do over in Yukon.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely with GMing the J, I kind of have an idea of how I personally like things to be run, and how I personally found success in Yukon with, and I try to help out and implement that in the SHL.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, there are transferable skills, so it does kind of put a different perspective, I think, on the SHL, as long as you're in the war room. Otherwise, just a player.
Yeah. Teddy, after being away for a little while, like, you were still somewhat around and somewhat engaged in the site, and now you came back, are fully invested in the second player, and through that ramping up into the second player, ended up as GM of Detroit. Does your past experience on your first player, both the hyperactivity that we all had during COVID, the inactive period, and now your return and like your reasons for returning to the site, has that played a role in how you approach GMing at all?
It's a good question. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think at the start, I was really excited to come back. It had been a while, and I was due for a recreate. And, well, I also just let Edward Williams die. And then when he died, I was like, well, I probably should make a new player. And I think when I just came back, because it had been, I think, like almost a year and a half of inactivity on actually the site.
Yeah.
I was in Discords and stuff, but I was just really excited to just kind of dive back in again. And that's kind of what I brought just in general to Detroit when I was drafted there. And so when the GM spot kind of opened up, I immediately just wanted to take that on and bring the passion that I had back to Detroit, which was in a rebuilding state, like a heavy rebuilding state with a pretty inactive locker room in terms of rostered players.
Yeah,
I
especially
think
with what you were used to, because when you were back on Detroit the first time, it was that
exactly.
hyperactivity during COVID.
We had like a 9-person draft class where we were all active back in that 52 draft class. So I think I just brought a lot of excitement back, and I think in terms of experience, I just used what I had learned back in Detroit, really. I feel like I've never been super in touch with the SHL side of GMing, if I'm being honest. The longer rebuilds, the more focused on the higher end players, but in the Jays, it's really awesome because you can just need to find those 425 guys. That's all you need. And so I've just been approaching it from like who's excited to be part of this, kind of new old Detroit.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice that you were mentioning effectively finding 425s, and that's part of it for as far as like the competitive side goes. But it's nice in a way that SHL GMing, you're trying to find people and keep them continually invested and working on things and part of your little sub community for full calendar like multiple calendar years, and there's a lot of variance that goes into that, and there's less variance on the J side of like if you can find somebody and they engage with your team and what you guys bring to the table and they're having fun. Generally, I mean, obviously you have some people that have things come up, but generally the payoff is consistent. It's always there. And there's just a lot less volatility, which lets you kind of demonstrate like GMing skill a little bit more. Not necessarily like FHM skill, but like your ability to navigate resources and drafting and scouting and all of that. I guess Teddy, I can imagine where Teddy's answer is for this, but Fluw as well. Do you guys see yourselves moving to an SHL position at any point, or do you think that you're a better fit or enjoy the J side that much more that you really wouldn't want to move on?
Yeah, sorry, I'll just
go ahead.
piggyback off kind of what I just said, where I've never really, like when I was on Texas my first time, I feel like I wasn't ever, unfortunately, I just didn't get as committed to the Texas locker room, I feel like, as I ever was in Detroit. And so naturally I've just kind of been more in tune with the SMJHL side of things. And I like, the shorter rebuilds, the possibility of kind of continually, like you said, kind of showcasing your GM skills, always kind of being in the mix. The SHL side seems daunting, if I'm being honest. Having those long rebuilds like Kahri in Manhattan is on.
Fluw in Toronto.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I think we all remember that. What was it, 0-50 season, or was it 0-66?
Yeah, it's Tampa.
So, I mean, those are tough, but it's probably a little bit more rewarding at the end of the day.
Yeah. Fluw, any potential that you'd move on, or?
So effectively, the only way I move on is if there's an expansion.
Okay.
I already have 2 or 3 franchise ideas in my back pocket with branding.
Okay.
So it's pretty much like I will move if there's the option of expansion to have my own team. Otherwise, I'm sticking to JGMing forever.
Okay. No, ACAP, we're expanding the SHL. It's different. I'm a little bit surprised that you'd be so enticed by expansion, because while not from scratch, not your project from scratch, you got to be a part of a J expansion in Great Falls, and then you got to be a part of a J rebranding and basically power washing, where you got to implement your own ideas. Is the expansion that much different in your mind?
I wouldn't say so. I'd say it's pretty much the same. It's basically getting your own team from scratch, building your own culture from scratch. There's no history involved, and yeah, just makes it easier to track history too. Because I have a little fun thing that I do with UConn and have this massive spreadsheet of that I update every off season with player stats, awards, all that stuff. So I keep that updated all the time. So it's easier to do that as well, starting from scratch, than it would be jumping in
and having
with
to
one
go
of
back
these
through all
storied
the history.
franchises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, me out here getting drafted by Carolina, which had a storied history, and Fuzz had just applied his branding to it, and then ending up in LA, which has a iconic branding as far as the SHL is concerned. So I get that. Rich wants to expand both, and honestly, the J is a little tight. It's not at the point where it's not.
A-Cap's gonna lose it, genuinely.
A-Cap, you have your choices. I will change 5 new rules, or we have an expansion.
I'm sure you've already got 3 in your back pocket.
Yeah, I do. Just shh.
But honestly, like, the J is a little tight, and we had changed some things recently where, like, we went down from 4 lines to 3 lines for the forwards, and that kind of cinched everything a little bit. But with the portal, it does change what user retention looks like a little bit. It changes what min earners look like. It changes what career J players look like. It changes the number of people that reach the end of an SHL career and want to recreate versus taking some time off. And if it's very reasonable that the active player base in the league is going to increase over the next calendar year with the portal, and that's it. It's a little tight. I mean, there's a good number of SHL teams that are pretty tight. There's a lot of teams that are looking at, like, okay, what do we do with, we have an extra prospect or two, and we have J teams that are entirely full on actives, and that's potentially on the horizon again.
Piggybacking off of that, like this past draft, for example, we had a bunch of picks, and I think I even got an active at like pick 77, which is insane. So it's like, yeah, if drafts continue, and I think it's all thanks to the portal. I mean, all those players are still active right now, earning on my team and in my LR. So I really think that the portal just has had a massive effect on keeping people around that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it'll be interesting to see what the, not necessarily short term, what the medium term effects of that are on both leagues. So have fun with that discussion in like 3 seasons, Kahri. Because you're gonna have to have that conversation, and it's gonna be honestly kind of an interesting one, I think. Because you're gonna have to consider the sustainability of how the player base is looking, and I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic about that. Expanding the J would honestly be really nice, just to get off of 14 teams as well, because
it's an ugly number.
It is honestly the worst thing that exists right now in the league.
We're so close to 16, which is a nice even number for everyone making the playoffs.
Yeah, and honestly 12 is good too. It's just that 14 is awful for a lot of the logistics and how awful of a game FHM is. We can have A-Cap on soon, and we can bother him about expansion in person. I'm sure he'd love that. Get Jess in here too again. Mid-season check-in. How are you guys both feeling? I guess all 3 of you. How are all 3 of you feeling through the first half of the season? Carolina's been a little iffy, but things are starting to get figured out. We also had an absolutely brutal first half of the season schedule, where we played Vancouver 4 or 5 times and Anchorage like 4 times. So that's been less than fun. How are you guys feeling? Teddy tied Fluw 2 points back. Where's the vibes at right now?
Um, Honestly, the past couple sims have been pretty brutal. On Detroit, we were flying for. I'm honestly not sure why. I genuinely I can say my GM tactics were improved this season.
Okay.
Maybe that's true, but I mean, we were up at fourth, I think, at one point, maybe tied with points in third. But I think things are starting to even out. With a bit bigger sample size, Carolina's going to move its way up the board. Because I mean, obviously I've been talking to Kari a lot about it, but I think you guys were like number 2 in TPE, so a bit surprising to see Carolina so low, and that was funny, but now I can't laugh at you because you're above, technically above us again.
Yeah, I think we have a winning record against you guys too, which is my only saving grace right now.
For myself, with UConn, basically, we got absolutely destroyed this past offseason, losing like I think it was 7 425 players,
Yeah.
and then I lost one guy to a 425 defenseman to a call up that was just kind of happened one season early. So I got basically gutted. Filled everyone with actives this draft, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
But kind of expected a slower season. And also this season, I implemented something a bit different than what I used to do. So it's a really experimental season. Basically, I've had my rookies pick an FHM role that they want to play.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it doesn't work properly. Doesn't matter if it sucks. Just told them pick one that you want to play the most. I will try to make it work with the lines and tactics.
Okay.
I'll just keep you at that for the whole season. So I have some interesting player roles on different lines. Basically, my line changes have just been shuffling lines, moving people to different lines, trying to see what works, and it's getting there.
I mean, honestly, like it seems relatively effective. You guys are the 4th scoring defense, which is great. Middle of the pack for offense, but Carolina has turnover to talk because ours has been anemic.
Yeah.
But like overall, it doesn't seem like it's going that bad. It's just not showing up in the win-loss, where it's like a lot of close losses and a couple blowout wins.
Yeah, it's like I'm down there at the bottom, but I still have a positive goal differential for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's cool though that you're able to facilitate that, and it honestly, I'm sure it has dividends in retention. It's something that we try and do in Carolina, but it's more like what type of player do you envision,
Right.
and that kind of, regardless of what the build entails, like there's an idea of like what the player wants to be doing on the ice, and we'll try and make that work, but it might not always be a specific role.
Yeah, so like kind of elaborating on it. So like for example, I had another one player that specifically was like, yeah, I want to be a counter-attacking forward in the file, but he's like emphasis on, for example, speed though. I want to be speed.
Yeah.
So it's like I'll help you with a build by trying to get you to be as best of a counteracting forward as possible, but also making speed like a priority, just so you have high levels of speed, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just like whatever like the user wants. I like try to help get them a build that kind of fits that, even if it's it's maybe not advisable in the grand scheme of things, because you want to, at the end of the day, it's just them being happy with their player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've started to do something in Detroit where I took this idea from Texas back in the day, where I have like a spreadsheet where I make builds for everyone. I did it for like all the older players.
Yeah.
And then I tell them like, you can use this build, you cannot use this build, but like this is what I would recommend. And then for the rookies, Trash made like cookie cutter builds.
Yeah.
For like kind of like a defensive winger, like offensive winger, like defensive defenseman, offensive defenseman. And the way it worked out, all our rookies actually picked roles like offensive, defensive minded. So like we're pretty balanced in the current state of things, which was just kind of lucky. But I kind of like the vibe of like, hey, here's like a pretty good idea for a build. But
yeah, no, we're more similar to that, where there's at one point I had built out sort of templates to go off of with similar, like, here's your defensive defenseman, here's your two-way defenseman, here's your offensive oriented defenseman, same with forwards, wingers, and centers. There's, I think, like 5 or 6 templates in total. And it was like, here's like a good base. You can flex the base around as much as you want, but like that, if you get to like this, it leaves you plenty of TPU left over to specialize in whatever you want to do. But this is going to be like ensuring that you're good at all of the things that that you want to be doing. So like if you're an offensive defenseman, like there's so there's like, you know, things that you expect an offensive defenseman to be doing, but then also like things that your offensive defenseman will be specifically good at, and that's been like a good balance for players having a lot of agency, but then also feeling like they are on the right track with something. Like they can feel confident and like, oh yeah, I want to spend this TP here, and like it makes sense because I'm like going to like follow this kind of template, and that's been a nice little effective balance. But I also probably need to update those sheets because they were right as we switched over to FHM8, so they're a little old at this point. Getting back, because we were talking about doing this in the draft, how did you guys feel that your recent drafts went? I know Fluw mentioned that he was pumped about how deep the draft was. I know, Teddy, you were able to get Roast Puff and, you know, other people that you're super familiar with. We were able to get Kahri was doing scouting for us instead of you, which was fantastic. And we got people that Kahri absolutely loved interacting with, like deep in like the third round, and like overall the class felt really great. How did you guys in the moment feel, and how did you guys feel looking back now about how that draft went?
I can start.
Yeah.
I think at the time I couldn't believe how deep it was. Like, I, obviously had like my personal draft board, and the way the draft started, the first two rounds, like most of the names that were taken like weren't even like coming close to like my top players. Like, I think it was just the way so many teams ended up getting the players that they wanted. So I think almost everyone's gonna end up pretty happy with it. And personally for us, like we got a bunch of our top picks. Yeah, we got Roast Puff back, Dan, obviously, Denkoa. So a couple big alumni, and then filled it up, I think, with four like really active rookies, new gens, which is really great. Like it's been some really good vibes in Detroit again. Very active, and I'm loving it. So hoping they can all hit 425, but obviously, life stuff comes up. But so far, so good. That's how I'm feeling. So far, so good.
Good. Let's see.
For me, with that, just to kind of segue off what you were saying with your picks being up on the board, I legitimately was like still picking people that I ranked in the first round for me, in the fourth and fifth round, which is absolutely insane. Like I think I got Vin at 63, which I was just like, that was kind of surprising to me. But I mean, it was a deep class. So.
No, they were looking back, because I was not able to attend. We'll say. But looking back, like the next morning, it was surprising how everything unfolded. People that, because I'd done a lot of work for Frenchie and Pyro and Kahri before I went away for the weekend, and had a similar experience of like, I was like, okay, these people are clearly like, first or second round talents that are, sliding forever in the draft. And it was just not because like they were getting overlooked. It's because everybody had like a top 10 that was still live in the second and third rounds, and it was kind of nice. I was happy for a lot of teams, I think. Getting into user questions, one that was specifically for tonight, Slicer was asking, and something that we already kind of hit on, but what's it like GMing in these 4-season intervals? Fluw had mentioned that he had, a lot of people go up, had an extra call up, so like he has a really deep rookie class, and it's kind of an example of how teams frequently end up in these cycles where they have deep classes and shallow classes depending on the year. So everybody's essentially going through these cycles or these waves of how many veterans versus how many rookies are on the team. What does that do for you as a GM as far as how you approach season to season changes, how you approach roster management? That it's a constant cycle that is like 3 or 4 times quicker than the SHL.
Kind of with that, it's like almost having like it's really hard to have like a 3 or 4 season plan, but I'd say a 2 or 3 season plan if everything goes perfectly. Effectively, kind of having a general idea of how every player is going to line up, where your picks are going to line up the next couple seasons. It's having that draft capital available to either make waiver trades, or if you're going to be losing a bunch of players, having enough picks to make up for that loss, and maybe also staggering losses or staggering the picks over a couple of seasons so that you're not hit with a massive loss. Again, it does happen though, considering like we have draft classes like we did last season where it's like you're going to want actives, you're not going to just want to trade out and stagger it. Which then when they age out, it's going to hurt, and especially with the early call-ups, it's something you can't really plan for, but you can, I guess, mitigate it as best as possible.
Yeah. Teddy, you've had a couple seasons now to get your bearings. Has that caught you off guard at all, or is it kind of what you remember from your original time in Detroit?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like Fluw said. You can have like a 2 to 3 season plan, which is how I've been looking at it. I mean, overall, I kind of like the idea of how it's 4 seasons max to kind of continue to rebuild, because that gives different strategies. Like you could go all in, like use all your draft picks in, one draft just to stack up and then have a crazy rebuild, after hopefully winning at a cup. Or, maybe be cautious about trading picks and just constantly always having good picks, always potentially having a consistent team, which I know Maine has been really good at.
Yeah.
3 regular season titles, nothing to scoff at. But I mean, yeah, I love it because, when I came back to Detroit, like I said, I think there was 1 active rostered player, and now, 3 seasons later, we have fully active besides, I think our backup goalie.
Yeah.
So.
Kahri, how does that play, I guess, into the mindset from like the user perspective? Is like, does it bother you to see like, okay, this is just like a season where we're like, it's supposedly a developmental league, but there's just going to be like 1 or 2 seasons where you're not relevant compared to the top teams in the league? Is that a problem, or is that just kind of a not terrible consequence of the entire situation?
I don't think it's terrible. I think it's kind of like part of like the experience. I know some people just want to constantly win, but like that's not something I care about personally.
Yeah.
Like I said it before, like I'd rather be on a team and like watch it grow than just be with a team just because they win always.
No, there's definitely upsides to that. It's also nice from the developmental side, is like, if you assume that like every team has like 2 seasons where they're more successful, 2 seasons where they're not, it kind of shares the success and shares the victories across more of the user base, which is generally good for having people feeling like they're accomplishing something. You're not having a lot of teams go through 4 bad seasons in a row and leaving those users feeling overly dejected. And it's something that, like, at the SHL level, you've got like these longer rebuilds going on that take 4, 5, 6 seasons. Those suck, but at super early on into a user's experience in sim leagues, that can be extremely detrimental. So it's nice that it's all super short-lived as far as the J is concerned. Let's see. I keep losing my tabs. TIG, we're hard segueing, but TIG, the last time we were on the show, was recently announced as the new head of the Hall of Fame department. And we're coming in with the awards team head considerations now. And we had talked about the value of Hall of Fame as a concept, and that it's an incredibly valuable thing to the league, as are the awards and all of these recognitions of the work that people put in. As people that have experience with Hall of Fame caliber players and spent time around Hall of Fame caliber players in their locker rooms, what do you guys want to see added or included with the Hall of Fame to elevate it? Anything that can improve the actual concept rather than just saying, yeah, this is valuable, we need to have it and keep it around. What do you guys think, if anything, it would benefit from having?
I'll be honest, I don't really pay much attention to the Hall of Fame. I feel like it hasn't been like on pause for like quite a few seasons now. I don't remember seeing much of it. I don't remember if there was a Twitch presentation, like awards, or like I really honestly don't recall.
It was on pause for a while, which the old head had dipped away, and TIG has taken over now. So he's working on the catch-up plan, which is effectively just running more Hall of Fame votes in a short amount of time. Which honestly, like, if you get into a rhythm, it probably isn't too bad. But definitely a little bit of a weird circumstance. I wasn't sure overall with the caliber of player that you've put together, Fluw, if that was something that was routinely on your mind or something that you were aware of or not.
I mean, like, with my previous player, Christensen, I was like hoping he'd make Hall of Fame, but again, like, I guess I don't really know the criteria for what would be considered Hall of Fame or not. But again, I know TIG's probably gonna iron everything out, considering it seems like there's a lot to be ironed out. So it's hard to really say right now until we see kind of TIG do his thing and kind of get a kind of fair assessment or feel for how it's gonna look. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think specifically it's been the trading card, and I think it's something that we mentioned on stream at one point. Like the trading cards and like the Hall of Fame trading cards existing is such a cool addition to that experience. That I think more unique ways of celebrating these old players in the history of the league is super interesting. More than just, and it's something that I think is potentially on mine and Kahri's radar, is improving the way that these accolades are celebrated. There was for a while an idea floated around the events team that we were going to do like a more defined award show than just a PowerPoint presentation. There was the idea that we're going to have these before awards trading cards were a thing. There was an idea that there was going to be awards SIGs, basically similar to what the ISFL has, that I had worked on a template for, and those additional ways of highlighting the users seem interesting. Even as far as like custom user groups to like give a slightly different title or like username color on the form. A lot of different like little touches you can do to highlight contributions and successes. I know Kahri at some points had mentioned being interested in GMing. I know that some people in the chat have had that experience or have expressed interest. As we get towards the end of the show, because I'm actually feverish and getting sick, so hang with me for just a couple more minutes as we get closer to the yeah. Getting closer to the end of the show. Pyro was wondering, any tips for those that are contemplating GMing someday? I know Carrie and Pyro in Carolina were more getting involved with the scouting process and getting involved behind the scenes a little bit. Outside of just get involved, get like work experience, do you guys have any unique ideas on or advice for people that are thinking of taking a step to get invested with the league in that way?
So again, you touched on it, but I think the main thing would be getting invested in the team that you're drafted on.
Mm-hmm.
I get that, it's most GMs are going to be open to, if you ask for, to help out with the management side of things or the war room or whatever, they'll more than happily take you on. And that's kind of like the first step towards it, definitely, because it exposes you to so much that goes on between trade talks, between the inner workings of a team, between like tactics, again, scouting, all that stuff. It really exposes you to a kind of broad sense of things. Again, like another job that is really cool would be, and I think Kahri's done it, and it's with JHO as an intern.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you did.
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
But yeah. My memory's crap. So, but yeah, that's also really cool because you do kind of get an insight in how HO works, and get that extra cash for that earning, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of like steps I would take, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I started off. I was never an intern per se, but my first player was an absolute disaster. I could not get into the league whatsoever. Like I literally just dropped off and couldn't contain interest in it. And the second go, got more involved. Had a media grader job, which I got fired from. But that's a different story. Joined JHO, WJCHO, JCGM. That's another thing that's an option that you can definitely do to kind of get a little sense of GMing the World Juniors.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I also just got involved in a team's war room. I think it was Colorado. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I wasn't involved there, but I think I was. But yeah, and that's kind of where I ended up wanting to GM, and then ended up being the co-GM of Great Falls, and then took over UConn.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about the different job pipelines, and honestly, that and like the value of being in and around HO, and honestly, like I don't even think it has to be like HO specific. I think that most departments, anywhere you can find other people invested in the league, you're going to find perspectives, and people like to talk about their ideas. You're going to find perspectives about how the league operates, and they might be different from the ones that you're already exposed to. I know a big one for both Teddy and I is that when we were all starting up with all that SHN stuff, we had no idea about the depths of the league and how it worked and how everything interacted. But we got guys like Rich and guys like Luke and Jay and like these people that had ideas, and they wanted to talk about their thoughts on things, and from that you get additional insights to things and it doesn't have to be just an HO specific thing. Just getting involved in the community in a way and getting to see how different people perceive things in and around sim leagues is super valuable. Even if it doesn't lead to like a direct position, it gives a lot of experience and a lot of extra connections that you can build upon once you're in one of those spots. Or you can be like Kahri and do scouting and then JHO interning and SHL HO and awards head and however many more positions she'll find before the end of the calendar year.
No more. I'm done.
Okay, we'll see. Well, all those misplaced updaters are going to need new jobs, and they're going to need people to run those departments. So, let's see. Anything else to hit on? I don't think so. We'll hit closers. Nobody offered a closer, so I'm going to come with one that's not food related because Jesus Christ, I'm pretty sure if I bring any more food related takes into a discussion forum, I'm going to have my head cut off.
Yeah, I'm going to go inactive if it happens.
Have you had to hear about any of that, Teddy?
Yeah, no, I know about all of it. It's disturbing and wrong.
What TV show are you guys watching right now?
Great question. I just started The Leftovers. HBO. It's based on a book about basically people who, like, there's a large percentage of the population like leave the face of the earth, like they disappear.
Is it like the Left Behind series?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember I used to be heavily involved in a church, so I remember everybody being obsessed with those books.
Yeah. So that's kind of been watching, and then I've been watching 3 shows. I've been watching that, Miracle Workers, also on HBO, and Veep, also on HBO. So just HBO binging right now.
Yeah. Kahri?
I don't watch much TV, but when Love Island Games comes on, then that will be my choice.
Okay. Very fair. My girlfriend was watching the start of Love Island this year, and I don't know if she ended up finishing it. Some seasons are like super hit or miss, so I don't.
Yeah, this was a bad season, so I don't blame her if she stopped.
I currently, we're both watching the Great British Baking Show, which is a yearly hit for us, but also continuing the over the seas TV. I'm watching a lot of Taskmaster recently.
Oh, that's so funny. I love Taskmaster.
Shout out to Greg Davies and whoever his user was. I don't think he's active anymore, but great show, very funny.
Personally, we're halfway through Spooktober right now, and that's like a tradition now in my house. So we watch Halloween movies or shows, or I guess horror thriller type shows, every evening. So right now we're watching The Fall of the House of Usher, which just came out on Netflix.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's interesting. I won't say much more than that. But we're on the last episode now. I'm gonna watch it right after this.
Yeah, and then one of my coworkers was actually raving about the Beckham documentary that's on Netflix now, I think, saying that it was actually pretty good, so might get into that next. Fluw, how much Frenchie's bringing up in the chat, how much Bluey have you had to watch?
None yet.
None yet?
This is pretty I guess all we watch really is just music shows.
Okay.
songs, not real shows yet.
Give it time then.
I'll have to. But he'll watch them soon, more than likely.
Yeah. Gonna call it because I need to get to bed soon. Thank you guys for coming out. Sorry, it's a little bit of a short episode as we cross the hour mark anyway. Thank you to Roast and Venture and Chevy for those primes. We'll get that sent off to the charity drive tonight or tomorrow morning. If anybody else has a prime sub and wants to put $2 from Jeff Bezos' wallet into the charity drive, go ahead and do that. Thank you, all three of you, for coming out. Been a blast. Always enjoy getting other people's perspectives on things. Shout out to me and Kahri on awards co-heads. You'll hear more from us this week about that. Good luck the rest of the season, Teddy and Fluw, but not too much luck. And I think that does it. Have a good night, and we should be back next week.
You as well.
Good night. Feel better.
Thanks.
Everyone who's sick.
Wrong button.